Welcome to You're a Nice Guy But, the true story of a garage band, episode 2. In this segment, we're going to talk about the years from June of 1978 through December of 1979 and the band Variety. Just a few short weeks after Phase 2 had played its last gig, Dana reemerged in a new band with 3 new players. That band was called Variety, and I had heard that they would be playing at a Battle of the Bands in Bellevue. Along with Steve Bailey, I pulled together a makeshift band and called it Phase 2. We weren't very serious, but we figured what the heck, and we entered the Battle of the Bands. We found out we'd actually be in a different category than Dana and his new band because some of our members were over the age of 18. This new band consisted of Dana on lead guitar and vocals, Tom Wilde on bass and lead vocals, Dave Valdez on drums, and Dana Leonard on rhythm guitar. I really liked this new band of Dana's, and one of their original songs called Someone Like Me. What do you remember about how Variety all got started?
I was going to a church. I was in a youth group at a church in Bellevue, not too far from where Dana lives.
No.
And this guitarist, I played bass. Yeah, I played bass with this other guitarist for a little bit at the church, just once or twice, and he said, "Hey, I know this guy. He plays lead guitar. He just quit this band and he's looking for a band." And so I said, "Well, I'd love to meet him." And so, because I didn't know anybody who played lead guitar. I mean, he was 15 years, 12. I don't know how old we were, man. But I didn't know anybody who could play a bass or play a lead guitar, and Dana was it. So he introduced me to him.
You want to know the funny thing, Tom? I don't know how I met Dana Leonard. I don't remember how I met him.
You went to school with him, and he probably introduced himself to you.
Maybe.
Yeah, because one of the funny things, or ironic, or I don't know what you want to call it, but our very last gig as a band in Phase 2, Dana Leonard played bass for us for half of the night because our bass player couldn't be there. But we don't remember how that came to be.
No idea.
So he played bass for half of our set until Steve got there and then left. And then 4 weeks later, you guys are playing, with Dana and Dana, and then you and Dave and
Dana and Dana.
And Dana seems to remember that there was
the drummer. We the first time we played together. Do you remember that, Dana?
Yeah, there was a guy who. Were we auditioning him?
I think so.
And we were trying to play Taking Care of Business, and he was playing it in 6/4 for some reason.
Oh, you remember more than I do. But I do remember.
No, it wasn't you, Dave. That wasn't you.
No, I did it in 6/8 on the river in Bellevue. Okay.
At the end. Because what we would do is we'd play the whole song, and then we would go to 6/8 and just jam.
Yeah, like a blues.
I don't remember doing that.
Yeah, that was kind of our arrangement.
But the first time we played together, you and me, Dana, we played side 2 of Abbey Road. Do you remember that?
It doesn't surprise me. No, I don't remember.
We played the whole damn thing.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and I was amazed that you knew it because I loved it. And I knew a lot of the bass, but not that much. I mean, I wasn't good at it, that's for sure. I thought I knew more than I did.
What was crazy was coming from Phase 2, where, I mean, it had kind of come from the ground up.
Yeah.
To have a guy step in who was a bass player who, knew the neck of the bass, right? and could sing and play bass at the same time and sing harmonies or sing leads was just like beyond us. You know, it was such a, it was such an upgrade,
By the end of August, Dana had asked me to join him in Variety, to which I gladly accepted. We were a cover band that played original music. We tried to play some of the current hits, but we just didn't feel some of that music.
That was the thing I recognized when, from the outside, that was the first time I saw you play without being on the stage with you. So being able to
Battle of the Bands.
so being able to see you and hear you, albeit with 3 other guys, was the harmonies that you and Tom did. And that was like, oh, that's what the next step, would have been, needed to be inside of phase 2 that we weren't going to get at that point with me at all. But I was like, okay, this was really good.
You never wanted me to be so weak. And if I appear to sometimes say nothing when I talk, I talk before my thoughts become a scene. I just can't help thinking I'm getting on your nerves. Seems no one deserves the way you flash your eyes. Broken dreams and magazines got me thinking twice. It always seems so nice. Oh, it all.
Kind of spelled out what we wanted to do with songwriting was be eclectic. How many bands would write slow songs? But we weren't afraid of writing slow songs, and so eclectic, I think, was the word.
Did you first start writing songs? Do you remember?
I copied a song from Godspell, and it was kind of a religious song. So I was playing like guitar for Vacation Bible School and getting little kids to sing, and because I had an acoustic guitar and thought I could play, and we'd have retreats, little cult retreats, and I'd show off for the girls, and that's when I first decided writing a song is the way to get girls. And they just go all over you then. Put together a sweet sounding song. But really Dana also, because Dana was writing songs, I wanted to write songs too. And this was when disco came out, Jim.
78.
Disco, and we that was the end of it for us. It was like, God, it's like getting COVID or something. We couldn't play disco songs, and we certainly didn't want to, and that's why we were so into, the Ramones when they came out, or other bands like Elvis Costello when he came out. It was like, oh, right, rock again, or the Cars, New wave is going to save rock and roll, was the thing that I heard. I think I heard you say that.
I don't know. I may have.
But I think both me and Dana decided that anything we could write would be better than writing a disco song. Anything that we would write would be better than something disco.
Johnny and Joey Ramone. And I've listened to a lot of interviews from them, And what's interesting about you saying that, you know, the music was changing and we were kind of getting a direction, and, you know, I mean, we had even tried to cover things by like Foreigner and stuff like that, but we weren't Foreigner. We didn't play like Foreigner. We didn't sound like Foreigner. And where the Ramones came from is they knew they wanted to be a band, but they also knew that they not only couldn't play the stuff that they heard on the radio, they didn't like it, you know? And I didn't like that stuff either, right? I didn't like Toto and Styx and Foreigner. And what's funny is I heard an interview with Joey, you know, a few years before he passed away, and he pretty much said exactly the way we were feeling in the late 70s, is that, you know, we didn't like that stuff, we couldn't play it, we're writing songs because, you know, we don't play and we don't write like the stuff that we hear on the radio, you know? And, you know, just the idea of we're putting a band together because we don't like what we're hearing. We don't like what we hear on the radio. And the weird thing about the Ramones is their ultimate goal was they really wanted to be the Bay City Rollers. They really thought, and that's not, I mean, that was a quote from one of them. They were really hoping that they were going to be like this big, like, teenage band, meaning teenagers were just gonna, you know, really be into what they were doing, which is part of the reason why they did Rock and Roll High School, the movie, you know, because they thought, you know, that was going to be what was going to appeal to kids. And all of their influences, like you would think, you know, their influence would be like, oh, the MC5, Iggy Pop, and all that kind of thing. But, you know, one of Joey's big influences was like 60s girl groups. You know, he absolutely just, you know, and that's, even though their sound was, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, and grinding through power chords, they all had a really deep respect and love and reverence for 60s, like, AM radio pop. That's what they absolutely loved, right? And what you heard on their records was almost like their translation of how it came out, of how that kind of music came out when they played it, right? And it's really the same with us. We were, you know, and that's why it was like surprising to me when people would hear like Another of My Mistakes and they'd say, oh yeah, it sounds like the Beatles. And I'd be, what do you mean it sounds like the Beatles? That's a song I wrote, you know? But it's just all these things that go into like a meat grinder, you know, all these influences, all the things you've heard on the radio, you know, and things that you like, things that you didn't like, things that you can play, things that you really can't play or sing, you know, because at the time too, it was really common to have all these guys that had these really high tenor voices, like the guy in Foreigner again. This isn't to pick on Foreigner or any of these groups, because they all had very successful careers. You know, REO Speedwagon, another band I didn't like, but just all, you know, these, you know, like virtuoso musicians with, you know, lead singers that had really, and that just wasn't us. But what came out of us in the same way that, you know, all these influences that the Ramones loved came out in this way where if you listen to them, you wouldn't think this has anything to do with 60s pop music or, you know, girl groups that Joey liked a lot. You know, what came out of us was what came out of us. And it was just a combination of all these things that, you know, and we didn't sound like the Beatles, and we didn't sound like, you know, as the, you know, 70s were going on, we didn't sound like the Cars, we didn't sound like Blondie. You know, what came out was what happened when the four of us picked up instruments. But it was, you know, just kind of like our reaction to all that, you know.
We played a handful of gigs throughout the fall of 1978 and early 1979, and songs like Roxanne and So Lonely by the Police crept into our repertoire. Ever the entrepreneurs, we attempted to stage our own shows with limited success, but we did get enough paying gigs and saved up enough money to get into the studio and make another record. On June 4th, 1979, we went to Rainbow Recording Studios in Omaha, Nebraska again, this time as Variety, to record our next single. The two songs we chose were called The Prince, which was co-written by Dana and Tom, with Dana writing music and Tom contributing the lyrics, and Do You Think I Am, which was written by Dana. We chose Rainbow mainly because of the success we had had there the previous year with our recording.
Yesterday the world seemed such a mess. Tried for a chance so you knew you'd get much less. Today you're older, the world still hasn't changed. Think twice now, baby, you're giving them the same.
You guys ever know what The Prince was about?
No, what was it about?
The Prince, I had read, it's really a little too esoteric to be very hit-worthy. I remember when Dana came out with that chord progression and hit the B flat. That was so cool. I'd never heard a song do that before. But The Prince was taken from a book called The Little Prince.
Okay.
Have you ever read The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry?
No,
You
that guy
have,
up there
huh?
shaking his head. That's why he's my
Yeah.
editor.
So that's what that song is based on, is The Little Prince,
Ah,
which was a kind of a child story, fable almost, of a guy that lived on a different planet and had to dig out the baobab trees from his planet, otherwise they would overgrow his entire planet. And it was a very good story. It's a very interesting story about innocence and losing innocence.
that's what 1979 was all about.
Yeah.
But I hear this slam my name all over the streets, and what I hear you say makes me feel really needed. 'Cause everywhere I go, it's all over town, you still insist on following me all around. So tell me, all these things you say I am, do you think I am? Oh, honey, 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 do you think I am? Do you think I am? Do you think I am? Oh, honey, do you think I am?
We sent copies of our recording to record companies hoping for a call, but none came. We did garner some local airplay, but it seemed we were stalling. In the spring of 1979, we connected with a local booking agent by the name of Rod D. Toll. Rod was able to get us a number of gigs that paid much better than the ones we could find on our own, but in the end it seemed that we were spending more money with Rod than we were making money with him.
Point two, when we might have been going on some sort of a tour during the summer. Like Rod Toll had talked to us, and I don't know where the original idea for that came out, but there was some kind of and I don't remember much about it, to be honest with you, but I think at one time we thought that we were going to be doing something like that too, you know. listening to things like A Look From You, So Nice, and
Someone Like Me.
maybe Someone Like Me. But for 16, 17-year-old kids with like no musical training, except picking up how harmonies work off of pop records or listening to the Beatles a lot or whatever, our harmonies were really, really good and really tight. I was really surprised by that. I mean, to me, it was like the kind of thing where I expected to hear more mistakes in that way, but that was really surprising. I mean, I think at the time I think a lot of things we just kind of took for granted. Yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then we do it. It wasn't like we were afraid of what the next step was going to be. Oh, there's this, local country and western station thing. We're going to go play a song at it. We're not a country band, but we've got a song that's kind of like a country rock song. Why don't we do it, right?
Yeah.
And so. But the harmonies were just, I was very, very surprised at how good they are. And I don't remember us like sitting down and really like seriously working through, this is what the harmonies should be for the chorus on this song, and I was pretty, I mean, it was kind of like listening to somebody else, and I was like, wow, those guys really sing well together,
That was one of the comments that Tom made, in our chat, was that that you guys really sang well together it seemed without a lot of effort, right?
On a lark, Dana had entered one of his originals in a local country station songwriting contest, and it was selected as a finalist. We performed Lady Make Believe at the fairgrounds in Council Bluffs, Iowa on a hot August afternoon for KYNN Radio.
But if you really don't love me for my sake, make believe, lady, make believe.
After we had done the thing with KYNN, I'd gotten a phone call at the house one night from a guy in Nashville who was working for Bradley's Barn down in Nashville. And I don't know if I'd ever told you that story.
No.
Had so I'd gotten a phone call, at the house, and it's definitely a phone call from a guy from Nashville. And anyway, what he was asking me is if I would, here I was at 17, and he'd asked if I wanted to go down and make records in Nashville. He said, he says, you get to work, with the Jordanaires, who were Elvis's, backup singers. For all he knew, I was always singing country, or I was always singing country type songs, right? And they, somebody recommended us from the KOOO thing. Or was it KNN or KOOO?
KYNN.
It was KYNN, because there was also another, KOOO was also another country station at the time in Omaha, but And anyway, he said, I want you to think about it. And, you know, for a few days, you know, I hadn't heard from him. I didn't have his phone number or anything like that. And then the phone rang again one night, and he said, well, what do you think about it? And I said, I have a band. You know, I said, I have guys that I play with. I said, I couldn't just tell them that, you know, I got this offer to do something down in Nashville and just walk away from my band. He said, yeah, but, you know, and he had really good arguments, and he was probably right if I was a person who was really serious about wanting to have a career in music. And at the end of it, I just said, no. I said, I won't do it. I said, I just couldn't tell these guys that I've been playing with, you know, I mean, to me, you know, there's a whole lifetime, right? I've probably been playing with you guys for 4 years or whatever, you know, or going back 4 years with you. I said, I can't just do that, you know? And I never heard from him again.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
if you'd have been Alex, you'd have been long gone.
Yeah. No, but I've also thought about it. If I had gone down to Nashville and done something like that, you know, I would have been singing somebody else's songs. I would have been singing music I didn't necessarily like. I might have been on tours or who knows what. I mean, the way we started drinking in our early 20s, I probably would have been alcoholic and dead by the time I was 30 or 35, because I would have been so unhappy, you know, and that wasn't part of my reasoning when I was talking with the guy. I mean, but I have thought about it many times about just how miserable I would have been. I probably would have made my parents very, very happy, but, you know, anyway.
During the fall of 1979, Dana and I have both been graduated from high school, and now we were basically considered adults, and we were really starting to find our way musically with different influences. Dana had been listening to a lot of Joe Jackson, the Sex Pistols, and the Ramones, while I had been listening to the Buzzcocks, and a band called the Sinceros, and any other new music we could find.
The fall of 1979. You and I are both now, we're out of school.
Yeah.
For real, right? Summer's over.
Yeah.
We're either, you know, we've got jobs or whatever, you know, and I'm kind of going to school at UNO, not knowing really what I want to do. But I thought at that point, even though the gigs had kind of really dried up during the fall, you know, we started doing the recording and stuff at Craig's, and also so we spent a lot of time playing and rehearsing, but at the same time, I think it's where we kind of found our direction, because new wave music, whatever you want to call it, had kind of started to get on the radio, right? We could hear things like Blondie, we could hear things like Talking Heads, the Cars, you know, I think, you know, Elvis Costello, I think you and Tom both knew of Armed Forces, right?
Yeah, he, if it wasn't for Tom, I would never have heard of Elvis Costello.
You know, so those things kind of made it exciting. And so this is the seg, is that for me, when this all happened, it was, for me, it was like, this is what I want to do. And this is possible because this is the music that makes it possible. This is not Boston or Foreigner or whomever. This is music for nerds by nerds, I guess, in some way, right? You know, normal people. This is rock and roll. They're just calling it something different. But it's catchy. It's poppy. It reminds me of the '60s. You know, and it was, to me, it was like this was the time where it's like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do, and that's when school didn't really matter to me anymore. I said, okay, this band is, and this was probably before we kind of said, and I'm sure it was half jokingly said, we're gonna move to Boston, right?
We decided to change our name to better reflect the changing times We came up with a plan that we would move to Boston when Dave and Tom finished school in the spring. We spent most of the fall of 1979 recording and rehearsing. Dave came up with the name The Memos. He had been at work and he was shredding paperwork when he saw that most of it had a stamp on it that said Memo. So he said, "Hey, how about the Memos?" And we all said, "Well, that's not bad because none of us had anything better." We decided to move to Boston instead of New York or Los Angeles because over the summer of 1979 we had met a cousin of Steve Bailey's by the name of Sue Henderson, who happened to live in Massachusetts. Not only that, the cars were from Massachusetts, so that seemed like a good place to be. We selected December 31st, 1979 at midnight, which would actually be January 1st, 1980, to change our name from Variety to The Memos. We had a gig playing at the Prague Bar and Grill in South Omaha, which was right next door to the Bohemian Cafe, which is a local landmark in the Omaha area. We gathered up a bunch of friends and we had a night to remember.